Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 708, and today's date is July 3rd, 2015, and the title of this episode is U.S. Government Doesn't Want People Thinking About the 4th of July. Now, before I get started, those people who are celebrating Independence Day, I wish you all a happy Independence Day, and just to let everyone know, there will be no report on July 4th. If something does happen where we see some type of an event, I will do a broadcast on Sunday, but at this point in time, the next broadcast will be on Monday, and that will be July 6th. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand out in Greece the situation is pretty much the same. I mean, a lot more information is coming out, and we understand there's a referendum on July 5th. The banks are still closed in Greece. Now, the Greek government is saying, after the referendum, the Greek banks will open maybe on Tuesday, July 7th. Others are saying, no, we don't know when these banks are going to reopen, and we're going to have to watch that very carefully. But one thing we do know is that the Greek banks, they are running out of physical cash. And in a matter of days, they will have none. Some reports are saying they will be out of cash by Sunday. And what's very interesting about this is that the people of Greece are saying, thank God they took out the cash because they wouldn't be able to pay for anything in any other way. And they're saying that wholesalers can't pay for supplies right now. Businesses which import raw materials have been hardest hit. And because of these capital controls, it's making it very, very difficult to go around and purchase things. A lot of store owners are saying there's nothing going on right now. A lot of people already raided the stores. Shelves are empty. And having the physical cash, having the physical gold, having the physical silver is a really smart thing to have on hand when the central bankers decide to cut off your electronic currency. And right now, we are definitely seeing this where people are saying, okay, cash is king right now. Precious metals is something that everyone should also have, because once cash is devalued and it becomes worthless, you have to move on to the next physical type of currency. And we see out in Greece, this has been proven. And we see right now in Greece that PayPal has been shut down because of the capital controls. PayPal wallet from Greek bank accounts as well as cross-border transactions funded by any cards or bank accounts are currently not available. Everything is frozen. It is very, very difficult to survive right now in Greece unless you had some type of physical or something to barter. And we are seeing out of the IMF, and we've been saying this for quite a while, but they've come out with this analysis and they're trying to convince everyone that, okay, look, we've come out with this new report, and the entire idea of lending more and more money and raising taxes only reduces, shrinks, collapses the economy. It doesn't help. All these policies ever do is promote bondholders at the expense of the population. The new numbers now available reflect that the total rescue program for Greece has failed in the most spectacular manner. So we're seeing right now more and more debt on a country, imposing austerity, propping up the bankers, does nothing except make the situation much, much worse. That's it. We didn't need them to come out with this analysis. We can see it with our own eyes. We can see that adding debt, imposing austerity, putting people out of work does not help. Period. It makes it worse for the country. Tsipras is saying the IMF report was never presented to us because they don't want you to have that. They don't want you to know receiving more and more debt destroys your country. And when we're looking at this, Tsipras is saying, okay, what's going on here? This just proves our case. You need to vote no on Sunday's referendum. And he's called on his people to remain united. He says, I call on you to vote no to ultimatums, to intimidation, to the fear campaign. However, I also call on you to say no to division, he said. No to those who are trying to spread panic and prevent you from deciding with composure and responsibility for your own future. I call on you to decide for dignity and democracy. And of course, as we know, the central bankers are out there and they're doing whatever they possibly can to convince the world that Greece is going to vote yes. Now, of course, they can come in, they can manipulate the referendum, and they can make it come out in their favor. We've seen this done many, many times. This is not new. So we can see at this point in time, and we're going to have to watch this and see what happens as we get closer. I see the poll numbers are saying, oh, it's neck and neck. We don't know what's going to happen. Of course, this is propaganda. This is what they're trying to convince everyone of. And we see other countries are supporting Greece in the no vote. France, by the thousands, they've been protesting, urging Greeks to vote no in Sunday's bailout referendum. People took to the streets and they're showing solidarity. We see that a group of people went to the Greek Supreme Court trying to cancel the referendum. And the Greece Supreme Court said, no, we're going to let the referendum go forth. Now, of course, if we think about what's going on here, we can say, these people were controlled by the central bankers, or they were the central bankers themselves, who went and said, you know something, let's see if we can get this thing canceled. Or they convinced a group to say this is in the best interest, just like they have the protesters out there trying to convince everyone, yes, we want austerity. Yes, we want more debt. Yes, we want more people unemployed. Yes, we want people suffering on the streets with no food. Yes, we want our children in poverty, because we just had a UN report saying those countries that impose austerity, the children grow up in poverty. So we can see that all of this is being orchestrated by the central bankers. They're trying to convince everyone we need this yes vote. Now, for the referendum, the polling stations will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. local time, and the result may be known before midnight. Pollsters haven't confirmed if there will be exit polls. Now, if there are no exit polls, that is an indication that this referendum, I should say, is completely fixed, because the exit polls gives you some type of idea of how people are voting. And when they do away with exit polls, like they did in Scotland, this is a sure sign that this whole thing is fixed. And we'll have to see how this plays out. Now, there's a software distributor, Singular Logic, which has been hired to run the vote counting and data processing. And I don't know, again, this is computer-based, so they could get in and somehow manipulate the numbers if they'd like. And we're going to have to watch the situation carefully, watch what comes out of Greece, watch what people spot, and we'll have to take a look at this after the referendum to see if there was some type of manipulation and the votes came out to yes, or it went smoothly, no manipulation. The people said, okay, we want no. Because you have to remember, the people voted for Tsipras. They voted for this government to stop austerity, to stop making these bad deals with the central bankers, to put their country back on the track of economic growth. This is why they voted for this government. If the people come out now and vote yes, it kind of counters what they voted for in the first place. If they really decide to go with the central bankers' agreement, why did they vote for Tsipras? It makes no sense. Now, we understand that Puerto Rico, they cannot pay their debts, and under the new Frank Dodd Act, guess what? There are no bailouts for Puerto Rico. And right now, they're trying to make the case if the IMF can bail out Puerto Rico. They're doing whatever they possibly can to get the debt spread and to keep this thing propped up. They don't want this going down just yet. And I'm talking about the economy. Because if it does go down, who is to blame? The central bankers. And they know this. So right now, the IMF, they're trying to make the case that, this could be an emerging type of country because it falls in the same category where, Puerto Rico can't pay the debt. It has excessive borrowing, inconsistent financial reporting, and low tax collection. So it kind of fits into the emerging type of countries where the IMF steps in and helps them out. But again, under the law, as a U.S. Commonwealth, the island also doesn't qualify for IMF aid. But they're trying to make the case so they can bail it out and give them what? More debt, which we know is not going to help. Yes, in the short term it will, but you know what happens when that money runs out? You're back in the same position, but worse, because you have more debt and less revenue coming in. Here in the United States, we see the unemployment rate is 5.3%. We talked about the unemployment rate yesterday, but Obama is out there. And he is telling lie after lie after lie. He is saying that since he took office, there are 12.8 million new jobs that were created. We are now 29 quarters from the pre-crisis peak, and a total non-farm labor hours utilized by the U.S. economy are no higher than they were in the fourth quarter of 2007. Well, that's not good. In other words, if you use a common unit of measure, and I'm not talking about Common Core, I guess President Obama's using Common Core because his math doesn't add up. Labor hours rather than job slots, which treat coal miners and part-time pizza delivery boys alike, there have been no new units of employment at all. Thus, during the comparable 29 quarters after the 1990 business cycle peak, the second quarter of 1990 to the third quarter of 1997, non-farm labor hours had increased by 12% during the same period of time. In 1981, from the third quarter of 1981 to the fourth quarter of 1988, labor hours expanded by 17%. That's what employment growth looks like. Nothing what Obama is talking about, because we haven't had that since 2008. There has been no new manufacturing job created during Obama's term in office. And in fact, the 12.3 million manufacturing jobs reported for June was still 10% below the level of 2007 of December, and nearly 30% lower than the 17.3 million manufacturing jobs reported in 2000. The 19.6 million goods producing jobs in June was 5 million lower than in January of 2000. In fact, there have been virtually no new jobs. And the jobs that have been created or transferred over from full to part-time are just that. They are part-time jobs. We are a part-time nation. So nothing is better now. Actually, we're worse off. Manufacturing has left. People who had full-time work are no longer working in their full-time jobs. The entire thing has fallen apart. And if we've had this job growth like Obama is talking about, we would again see real estate expanding. They'd be hiring people left and right in the mortgage departments. Why? Because people have jobs, people saving money, people want to purchase a home. They don't have this cash on hand, so you have to go get a mortgage. If more people go get a mortgage, they have to hire more people. But guess what? We're seeing the opposite happen. Very interesting. A report came out that retailers have suffered their worst June in almost 10 years as consumers are not spending and shopping. Well, if the unemployment rate is at 5.3% and the Fed has been telling us that we're near full employment, why aren't people out there shopping? They have these jobs. They're employed. What? They're not making the same amount of money? Yeah, that would be it. Or maybe they're manipulating the data to convince us that the unemployment numbers are 5.3%, because I am not seeing it. I am seeing retail contract. I am seeing real estate contract. And the auto industry is growing because they're letting in subprime borrowers. If you strip them out, the auto industry is contracting. Because you have to remember, when you go in and get a car, you don't need any money. They will finance or lease and give you all of it with nothing down whatsoever. Of course, your payments might be a little bit higher, but it doesn't matter. They got the car off the lot. Delinquencies, we're just not going to count those. We're seeing a report from goldseek.com, where recently published a report on the Freedom of Information Act request they recently filed with the U.S. government. They were looking to get the federal audits of the gold at Fort Knox. The government's response: they can't find the reports. Even though they refer to them quite often, they don't know where they are. That tells you the U.S. most likely has no gold whatsoever. And I know you heard a lot of people talk about this, that there is no gold. And I really do believe this, because if there was gold, they'd have no problem showing it whatsoever. The only time you hide something like this is when you really don't have it. Now, we understand the United States government central bankers, they are never, ever going to stop spying on the American people. They're going to continue this. And we saw from earlier this week that the FISA court ruled the NSA can continue the bulk collection of the phone metadata until November 29th. This comes after the congressional gridlock allowed for Section 215 of the Patriot Act to expire. Then they brought in the U.S. Freedom Act on June 2nd and gave the NSA 6 months to drop its spying program, but permitted the agency to continue collecting the data during this time. The only catch to all this is that the second court's ruling was left unclear whether or not collection could legally resume until the FISA court stepped in and trumped the federal court. And they're allowing the spying to continue, the data collection to continue. Even with the U.S. Freedom Act, all they're doing is moving who collects the data. Instead of the government collecting it, they're going to let the phone companies collect it, the internet providers collect it, and the government will just request it. And this is why everyone has to protect their information, just like you protect your valuables in your house. You protect your home by locking it. You protect your car by locking it. The same thing with your personal information. You can do it with encryption. You can do your searches using Startpage, and there's other search engines you can use besides Google. It refers to Google, but it hides who you are. You can use a product called Pocket, where they have these sleeves where inside of the material it's made up of silver, copper, and other metals, which blocks the signal from your phone. You can also use it for your credit cards, for your driver's license, because as we know, these smart IDs are coming out. The driver's license will have an RFID chip, and you can buy one of these sleeves, slide it in, and it will block the signal. So this way you're not tracked. It also has an additional benefit where it blocks the radiation from your phone. So you can go to blockpocket.com and you can get something like that. And there's many different ways that you have the ability of protecting yourselves. It's not just going to be one solution. There are many things you need to do. Just like on your home, you have a lock on your front door, but then you might have a safe, because now you have double layer security. The same thing with your information, same thing with your computer. You need all of this. And all of this put together will help stop the government from spying on you. It will make it at least more difficult. Now, we understand the powers that be are trying to convince us that the Confederate flag is the symbol of racism, which it is absolutely not. And we can see a lot of stores are banning the Confederate flag. A lot of manufacturers are not producing it. A lot of people that sell the Civil War games, they're not going to sell them. This reminds me of Nazi Germany and many other countries where they decided, okay, this is offensive and we made the decision for you, so we're going to get rid of it for you. Like burn all the books that we don't want you to read. We don't want you looking at the Confederate flag, so we decided for you what this flag symbolizes. No, that's not freedom of expression. That's not freedom of speech. The government doesn't decide for you. The people decide. And pressure from the government on these companies is not freedom of expression. This is control of expression. But when they've done a poll, they really thought that, oh, all these people are going to see this flag as a flag for racism. But it isn't. The poll come out that 57% see it as a flag for Southern pride. And this Confederate flag is not the flag for the Confederate States during the Civil War. So all of this, as we can see right now, is being ginned up to push racism, to control what you have and what you don't have, instead of you making this decision. And you can see they're doing whatever they possibly can to push this whole idea about racism, about people fighting against each other. Well, we need to stick together. Every single person, black, white, purple, orange, blue, no matter what religion you are, our fight is not with each other. Our fight is with the central bankers. Our fight is with the power elite. We need to stick together. What they're trying to do is divide us. And this is what we can't have happen. Now, out in Ukraine, we see the situation there is starting to really ramp up right now. We see Kiev is creating the constitution. It's not including the southeastern people. They're not following the Minsk agreement whatsoever, even though they're telling everyone, look, we're making drafts of the constitution. We're following the Minsk agreement. This is an illusion. This is propaganda to convince the world that they're abiding by the Minsk II agreement, but they are not. Because what they're doing is they're actually preparing for an offensive. The OSCE has reported that Kiev has been shelling in the buffer zone. All of the firing has been coming from the west. The OSCE's also said, we understand that the southeastern people are going to have an election in October, but we can't attend the elections unless we get permission from Kiev. And so far, Kiev has not given us any type of permission. We still have time, though. I don't think they're going to get that far because I think an offensive is definitely coming. The Donetsk people are saying Kiev is doing something very strange. In the Seversky Donetsk River, across the river, they see troops are getting prepared to stage an offensive. They're seeing engineering troops on the opposite bank, and they're building boat bridges, which is very odd at this point in time. Well, they're probably getting prepared and getting ready for a major offensive. And we can see by them moving their tanks around, by moving their military assets around, pretending to follow the Minsk II agreement, getting these soldiers trained, they are definitely getting ready for something big. And we know this is coming in the next 100 days. Russia right now is ramping up its Black Sea fleet. They are going to be bringing in new military hardware, the Sukhoi Su-34. twin-engine two-seat strike fighter based on the Sukhoi Su-27 is going to be brought in, and this plane is used for tactical deployment against ground and naval targets. They're modernizing the multipurpose Su-30M2 fighters. They are designed to gain air superiority by destroying manned and unmanned aircraft with medium and short-range missiles. Because Russia understands what's going on here. They realize the central bankers are not going to stop. They're going to keep pushing until they get what they paid for. And if they have to bring Russia into the fight, they will do it. They do not care. We see the state minister of Somalia is coming out saying that the United States is running a secret drone base inside Somalia. The allegations have been confirmed by others. Regional government officials and forces from the African Union can also testify to the base's existence. The U.S. is sitting here saying, we have no knowledge of this whatsoever. We don't know the exact nature of this support, the weapon systems or number of personnel involved in these operations. We can't disclose this at this time. Basically, they're doing a tap dance because they were found out, and now they're trying to figure out a way out of this. And these drone bases are being used to push back the people of the countries. Because again, we have to remember, when the U.S. government wants to get into a country, they're behind the people. They want to overthrow that government. They want to put a puppet government in. They're behind the people. Once they have a puppet government in that country, the rest of the people who are fighting against that puppet government, they are now the terrorists. And they create anti-terrorism forces. They use the drone program to keep these people back and in line. This is what we see in each and every one of these countries. Belgium is saying, listen, we're out of this coalition thing. We cannot go on with this fight. It is too expensive. The people of the country are completely against it. They disapprove of the spending of it, so they are out. Looks like the coalition is starting to crack right now. And we see the United States government central bankers are preparing to release some of the trained Syrian fighters that they've been training in Turkey. And they'll be bringing them into Syria this summer. And we've been talking about this, that there's going to be something occurring in the next 100 days. Not just in Ukraine, but in the Middle East. Because as we know, Congress goes on vacation in August. The last 2 years, we saw something occur. We're seeing the troops now that are trained, they're coming into Syria to join the fight. We understand that Assad is being surrounded right now, and they're building the case that he's been using chemical weapons. We see the propaganda, which always comes out first. It builds, and then we have the event. What that event will be, we will have to see. Because we know for a fact they need that authorization for war so they can go in and get Assad. Now we understand that the United States government central bankers are trying to keep people from celebrating the 4th of July. And tomorrow is the 4th of July. And we know that the FBI, they're canceling all vacations. They're going to be in high alert. They have command centers all over the United States. The U.S. Air Force has canceled planned Independence Day celebrations at the Norfolk RAF base due to the increased risk of attacks. So right now, our military, none of these people will be celebrating Independence Day because they're worried about some type of an attack, trying to separate everyone from independence. We have Peter King out there telling us that in New York City, there are already nuclear devices. He doesn't know where they are, but he knows that they're there. How could that be? So he knows they're there somewhere. They just can't detect them. They're not detecting radioactivity. They know nothing. They just know it's there. I mean, the argument falls short. But then I think back to Obama when he said, what happens if New York is nuked or bombed? And if they definitely are going to do something, like I said in my last report, they're going to have to do something big. And it's going to have to be in multiple cities. And they're going to have to convince the people that, yes, we need to pass the authorization for war. We need to go into the Middle East. And we can see we might be headed in this direction, but we're going to have to watch this very carefully because a lot of this is propaganda. And the thing is, if they go ahead and give the green light to this, they didn't protect us like they said they were going to, if you believe the official story. And you believe what they say. Because they said we needed all of this, the NSA, DHS, the spying, to protect you. We needed to search you when you're going on a plane or going to a sporting event. All they did was, nothing. Because the event happened. There was no protection whatsoever. So that fell short. Now, if it doesn't happen, it was all propaganda. All the information shows us it just doesn't work, and we don't need it. It was all done to scare every single person, and it feels this is exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to tell people, don't have big celebrations. Try not to have celebrations on the 4th of July. And I feel that part of their agenda, just like the Confederate flag, is to convince people to look away from the 4th of July, Independence Day. Because a lot of people, and this has been built up in the corporate media, they say it's all about barbecues, it's all about, people getting together, cooking hamburgers, hot dogs. But when we look at the Declaration of Independence, there's a passage in there which kind of sums up everything. And let me just read it to you. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, which means the people allow the government to exist. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. The Founding Fathers said in the Declaration of Independence that you will have to remove that government if it does not work for the people. And this is what the U.S. government is most afraid of. They're afraid of the people removing them. It's a threat to their authority. This is why we have the spying. This is why we have the fear tactics. This is why we have the spikes being put on the White House fence. This is why we have the additional guards to all government buildings. This is why they're trying to push the term domestic terrorist, sovereign citizen, even though they have no facts of any of this. All of it, most of it, were patsies from the FBI. And the cases they are trying to convince us that there's sovereign citizens breaking all these laws, they're just everyday crimes that are committed by everyday people. So we see what they're doing. They're trying to separate us from what the people really want. And if you bring this back to the Confederate flag, they're trying to get people to forget what the South was really trying to do. They were trying to be independent from the federal government. We're here on the 4th of July, which is Independent Day, to be independent from a tyrannical government. This is part of what the Founding Fathers, what the people were fighting for. To be separate and apart from a government. And of course, that government is normally controlled by the central banking community, as was the British government at the time. And we can see This is what they're trying to do to make everyone forget about your independence. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.